Welcome to Restaurant Catering Smarts, your go-to podcast for restaurateurs looking to better operate and grow their catering profit centers. With every episode, you can count on expert advice, innovative strategies, and tasty tips straight from industry leaders. Our purpose is to help your business thrive. So, let's dig in to another juicy episode.
Hello again. I'm Michael Attias, your host of Restaurant Catering Smarts, and today's guest is Lauren Laurent, Director of Catering Sales and Marketing at Levy Restaurants, based at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. Lauren leads with a passion for creating one-of-a-kind guest experiences that go far beyond the standard. With Columbus at the forefront of food, tech, and innovation, Lauren and her team embrace a hyper-local approach that showcases both creativity and collaboration. From designing distinctive catering programs to building strong client relationships, Lauren is dedicated to elevating every event into something truly memorable, and we're excited to have her on the show today. But before we get started, let's take a minute to recognize our sponsor, Caterzen Catering Software. They help restaurants turn their catering chaos into calm. Discover why restaurants trust Caterzen to save them time and increase sales. Go to caterzen.com and sign up for a walkthrough of the software. Now let's dive into this episode of Restaurant Catering Smarts. Welcome, Lauren. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. How are you today, Michael?
Great. Thanks for joining me. I like to get started with an icebreaker question. So if you can give me a number between 1 and 300, we'll pull up a question.
1 in 300. Let's go with 116.
116. What's the most impressive skill you have?
Ooh. I would say juggling 4 different things at once, in the sense of, even as recent as last night, I was on a conference call while making dinner for my children, in tandem with trying to help one of my other children at the countertop complete her homework, as well as trying to tackle a home project with some of the contractors that were at the house. So it was like a multitask, if you will.
Isn't that a superpower of a lot of women?
I I think it is. I think it is definitely a gender, or just in general, an individual that is accustomed to having to just figure it out, and try to make it look like it's okay, and that their hair is not on fire, when in actuality it is.
I think the only thing I'm good at in that arena is running a software company, and we've got I call it the plate spinner in the Chinese
Yeah.
acrobatic circus. And it's like, okay, which project do we need to put the most effort into? Like, this big client is screaming, so we need to put more spin on this plate. This plate isn't going to fall and break. So that is a
Yep.
great skill. How old are your kids?
We have 4. They range in age from 12 through 17. So fortunately, they're very self-sufficient. But I'm often finding now that, as much as I deemed them self-sufficient, they might not be as mature as we initially thought. They recently blew up our microwave, so we are working without a microwave, which, again, real world problems. But you never realize how much you utilize that appliance until you don't have it.
Well, it's funny. I'm an empty nester. And so I've got the most expensive coffee warmer in my kitchen. That's all I
Oh,
use the microwave for, is to warm coffee if it
it,
gets
it
cold.
as simple as that. I was trying to make a latte the other day, and I was gonna warm up my milk, and I was like, I've got to do it on the stove, and then I burnt the milk to the stove pan. So it was a catch-22, where I'm just regretting that ever happened.
Well, neat. Oh, it's a fun. All the ages are fun unless they're a pain in the rump, and cause problem. Luckily, I didn't find out a lot of the things that would have upset me about my kids till they became young adults, and then they shared things. So be prepared for whatever you think about your kids are going to come back in 10 years and say, well, that night you thought I was spending the night at Susie's house. Well, so
I don't
don't
think I
even,
want to know. I
you don't want
live
to know.
in naivety, and I'm fine being oblivious to things as long as they're alive and not arrested. You know what? I'll take it.
I'm surprised I didn't end up dead being a teenager. It's a
Yeah.
miracle. Okay, so let's you've got an interesting perspective. A lot of the people who watch or tune in They're in the restaurant business. We have some caterers, and you've worked in the hotel space and now the convention space where it's huge events, huge scale. It's not just, hey, I'm doing $250,000 in catering out of my deli, which is a lot for a one unit,
Oh yeah.
restaurant. But you're probably doing tens of millions or, or more. I don't even know. It doesn't matter. And you're dealing with, huge staffing events and whatever. And what I've always learned is look at what other people are doing in other industries and bringing into what you're doing, because even though that they're not going to be running the size of operation you're running, there's still lessons that you have from working in that space that they can take and say, how can I put my spin on it? So I'd like to go down that road. But first, let's talk about how'd you get into the F&B sales space and where you are now.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of stumbled upon it. Back when I was in college, event planning wasn't a thing, and I ended up as one of my internships, I was afforded the opportunity to partner with a local event planning company that supported one of our local communities. And from there, I really branched the passion of. And I would say it wasn't until later in my career that I developed the niche and the interest for food and beverage. I didn't know that I was missing it until, again, it similarly fell in my lap. I was working with a company within a facility, and I was approached by a very prestigious individual in our restaurant community. Their restaurant has won a ton of accolades and is very well known here, both statewide and also kind of in the Midwest. And they asked if I would spearhead their event division for both their restaurant on-site and off-site catering. And from there, I kind of fell in love with it. So it it was challenging as a young mother with young children to kind of juggle both. And then that's where it branched into something of more of a larger scale, where I was able to kind of take this into a different realm by partnering with the convention center when an opportunity presented itself. So I have been with the convention center since 2010. And have done various facets of the role and have been in this current role for a little over 6 years. So it's something I love. And, food never goes out of style. We all need it. And it's ever evolving. And I love that my day is never the same.
What is, we talked, before we started recording, one of my friends was in the DMC business and worked with a lot of, when a big convention or conference would come to town, she'd throw big events. And I know some of those events happen underneath your roof and some happen offsite. What is like the biggest, craziest event that you've ever done? Like, like this was like the crown jewel of events of all events.
Yeah. I so I think I don't know if restaurants are as privy to some of the economic impact or some of the convention center business. I do travel to cater stores every year, as well as a couple other of the professional catering events. But there was one that kind of unified us that for the most part people know about. It is something called PCMA, which is the Professional Convening Association, that is like the creme de la creme. If a city is able to win that business and host it, the events were huge. They don't hold anything back. And so I would say that was something that our city was afforded a couple years ago, and it was so fun. Like it wasn't like, yes, money was an object, but it also was a matter of, you know what, it doesn't really matter. We need to figure it out. So if we have to tap into a different budget in order to make this work, we have to really present our city well. So we worked with some really big name acts. We had a chocolate fountain of different foods that they could dip through it. We had a carousel that was spinning and had food that kind of teetered off of it, like all of which that our team created. And it was so fun to see that come to fruition, because we really honestly funny enough, only had like 9 months to plan it. So something to
Wow.
that magnitude, you would think you'd have years, and it wasn't that. It was a matter of, you find out about it, but you don't understand the scope of it until closer to time. So yeah.
So is this a conference of people bringing conventions to different towns and you won that piece of business?
Exactly. So it's essentially the demographic that is coming to that are professional meeting planners that ultimately work for the full gamut, whether it's an association or a corporate entity, or even there's some non-for-profits that are intertwined, and they're traveling to your city to not only learn about it, but to experience it to see if, in fact, they want to then in turn visit your city again to host their personal function that they're correlated to. So the
So
residual impact, it's such a long like domino effect of the economic impact for years to come. Oftentimes it's measured from 5 to 10 years post event. So
yeah,
it's
because
something.
aren't a lot of these conferences they're planning 2, 3, 4 years in the future because they've got to lock in hotel space
Yeah.
and convention space. Are you involved? So let's say a conference is coming to Columbus. Are you involved pitching it or getting it, or they bring you in when they've booked the conference and they go, okay, now I'm going to put you with Lauren and her team to discuss what your F&B needs are. Where you brought in this process?
That's a great question. So, something we've worked really hard on is normally like our DMO or DMC partner is the one out there with boots on the ground, sourcing functions to bring to our city. And just like with any, like whether you were to go to just a singular venue that specializes in social functions or a large one, oftentimes there's negotiations. Oddly enough, like it's funny because like you wouldn't go to a restaurant and necessarily negotiate, hey, I see this price per person.
Yeah.
Can I get a discount off this? But in our world, everything is somehow thought to be negotiable. So they bring me in at what we call the RFP phase, so the request for proposal phase, because food tends to be a predominant decision maker for a lot of these functions on whether or not they're going to get something out of it, whether it is a guaranteed price of coffee or a guaranteed discount or something along those lines that would benefit them and push them to select our city.
And how do you let's say how do you lock in a price a year or 2 or 3 in advance? Or do you have a rider that says, based on current commodity prices, how does that work?
I'm chuckling because literally before this, I was on a call with a client that we're negotiating their 2027 terms, and they want us to lock in pricing right now. And so my mind is spinning of, okay, how is this going to work? What does this mean? And, it's really, we have to do our due diligence and paying attention to trends for food and beverage, both from like what is occurring with our agriculture community, what is occurring with our produce, and do we see anything kind of tailing off? Is it still this volatile industry, or is it starting to level off? So, evaluating that component. But then in this current instance, it's more so like they're asking for a discount, but they're also asking for guaranteed pricing. And so it's okay, one or the other. So like I can give you this, I can give you guaranteed pricing for 2 years out, but you're definitely not going to get a discount. So it's either or. So it's kind of coming to a median term. I hate locking in pricing earlier than 12 months because it's so hard. I wish we had a crystal ball to know what's going to happen.
But
But
even 12 months, I mean, all you need is some crazy you got mad cow or
yeah,
crazy chicken disease or whatever is the disease of the day, and all of a sudden chicken goes up 300% and you've locked it in. I mean, do you have riders for that or something, or do you buy insurance? How do you protect yourself?
we don't. And that's interesting of the purchase of insurance in those instances. What we've been successful in is we do have disclaimers, particularly for those groups that we don't necessarily have to lock in pricing at X time frame. There are those groups that they understand that we're both conducting business. I'm in the business of making sure that we are successful, just as you're in the business of making sure that your event goes off without a hitch. And so it's more so of figuring out that blend. We do have disclaimers in our menus as well as in our banquet event orders to essentially say, like, these are subject to change up to this time frame, and or we reserve the right to substitute said item if need be with a conversation. But for the most part, it's just like with any business, you have to budget, and you're preparing whether it is 6 months out, 12 months out, or even further out. So we understand that the entity, the group that's coming here, also had to do their due diligence to put in place budget, because they're essentially selling registration for people to purchase and come to their convention or their event, and they did that based upon what they're budgeting for. So then
Right.
if I in turn change that, and so it's a catch 22. We have done a really good job on the back end if those instances occur of trying to help our bottom line, whether it is a flow through or whatever the case be. If some of those very challenging instances occur, but it's we're at the mercy of our current economy.
Yeah. But I mean, definitely with substitutions, you can't get this. They're open to salmon instead of whatever because the price goes through the roof. You're still going to get the same net effect, a good piece of fish that everyone's going to
Right.
enjoy. So that makes sense. I want to go back to the concept you talk about, this conference that came to Columbus to
Mhm.
showcase the city. Did you rely on your vendors to either show up and provide services slash product for free at a discount? I mean, were they brought in and say, look, I need you to step up to the plate and help us out because this is an investment in our future business together? Or is it sort of like you just had to go buy everything and deal with it?
I would say, just as all of us, whether big or small, we're in the industry of people. And so a lot of it was relationship driven, where it's a matter of I reach out to my vendor that provides linen or decor and in request that, hey, listen, can you help support this? And with your support, then you're in front of X amount of meeting planners. In addition to that, I will have you noted as a preferred vendor. And anytime I get a client that reaches out, you're my first phone call. So it
Right.
was kind of like a give and take. So yes, we certainly did have that. But from a food perspective, like hypothetically speaking, if the client gave us a budget of, let's call it $20 per person, but knowing that $20 is not going to give me much, and all these people that are coming to our city are going to look at the food of a $20 value and say, what the heck is this? This is not, why would we come to your
Right.
city? We took it upon ourselves to say, okay, well, we got to figure this out. I don't want to necessarily lose my shirt on it, but we need to make sure that it is, if it's a $20 price point, that I'm going to make it a $40 value because it's important.
Yeah. I mean, you got one shot to make a good first impression.
Correct.
And, I think what you did on a large scale can be applied on a small scale with the restaurant cater. We had I used to own a barbecue restaurant. I don't know if you're familiar with Corky's out of Memphis, Tennessee. Ever heard
Oh,
of them?
yeah, I have heard of it.
So I worked for them in college, and then I was one of their first franchisees in Nashville, and we did a picnic open house. So we invited all these HR professionals from all the big corporations in town to say, hey, we're doing a picnic open house. So we brought non-competing vendors. We went to some of our food purveyors and said, hey, could you make a donation towards this event? We're not charging for it, but obviously, we pick up bigger pieces of business. Um, it's going to benefit us all.
Yeah.
And we ended up having a great event and booked a lot of business. So even if you do something for office managers downtown to showcase your food for their office meetings, there's definitely, you can take what you've done that was probably a multi-million dollar budget, and you could do it a lot less and still have the same relative impact on your book of business.
Absolutely. It's interesting right now. We literally just had a group sales company wide conference call yesterday, and our reach, I mean, from our company perspective, we are in cultural attractions. So think of museums and entertainment venues.
Yeah.
We are in arenas and sporting events. And then our
You're talking
division,
about the Levy brand, the Levy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that they do a lot in the arena world and right.
yeah.
Okay.
So, and us specifically, convention center division. But so we've got all these sales professionals on this call, and one of our team members had traveled out to Texas to do an event, and it was like an intimate event. So think maybe a couple hundred people. And so what they were sharing were all these touches that they had throughout from start to finish. And oftentimes we have this conversation of, what differentiates us from going to a very beautiful restaurant that has a capability of hosting a couple hundred individuals, and why would they in turn choose the convention center? Like, how can we bring that feel into
Right.
our home, and vice versa, right? So like a lot of things that our local restaurants do, we try to replicate in some fashion within the capabilities that we have, because that's what is unique to the dining experience. People will always tell you if they had a terrible experience, but they won't really talk much about mediocre, but they will talk about something that's memorable. So that's the chatter that we're looking to hit, is the memorable experience, that in a good way.
Yeah. It's funny. I talk about, I'm definitely a big foodie. Since I was a kid, my mom was a phenomenal cook. And I think my first, I guess we'll call it fine dining experience, for lack of a better word, was at Epcot Center.
Oh yeah.
I graduated high school, and some buddies and I went on a road trip for 2, 3 weeks, and we ended up in Disney and Epcot. So one night we ate at, I guess, Alfredo's and had nice Italian. But then when we went to France, it was the escargot, it was the duck à l'orange, it was the souffle. That was probably my first fine dining. I've always loved good food, and I've said you've got to have one thing at a restaurant that makes you want to go back. Like, it's almost crave. It makes you crave to go back. And it doesn't matter if it's a roadside burger stand or a 3 Michelin star restaurant. There better be one thing on that menu where I have to go back and eat it. Otherwise, you're dead. If you don't have
Yeah.
one thing that is driving people to come back over and over again, I think you're dead in the water. There's just too many good choices and too many phenomenal players that you can't be mediocre.
100%.
Let's get into sales. Where did you learn how to sell? Were you taught in, your first catering sales job? Is it something you learned before? Is it something you picked up around the table? Sometimes you come from an entrepreneur family, or your dad or mom are in sales and they talk about it and they're demoed that. Where did you learn how to sell?
I would say, jokingly, when I was young, because I would negotiate everything. I joke, my grandfather used to blame my mom and say, something is wrong with Lauren because she's not listening to me and she's not taking no for an answer. So they either thought I was going to be a lawyer or a sales professional. So I landed in sales, and I think it's because um, it has so many opportunities uh, to hone in on a little bit of everything. So I get a taste of, like, my background. I went to school for communications and marketing, but also business law. So I get all of it. I get to look at contracts on a daily basis, but I don't solely want to do that. I want to engage with people. I want to have a conversation, a collaboration, and I feel maybe I'm different, but I feel like sales is not necessarily something you can teach. It's either something like it's a passion or something that you have to find in yourself. So like, you can have sales tactics and in 101, and you can have some of those components of like, well, how do you sell effectively? It's you start high, that way you have somewhere to go from there. You don't always start at the top because that leaves you nowhere to talk. And sales is always a negotiation. But at the same token, if someone doesn't have that innate sense of how to really have that fluid communication, then they might not be as successful because they're just not built for some of the tough conversations that sometimes need to happen because it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right. Did you sell anything as a kid, as a teenager?
Um, Jokingly, I keep saying that, but, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but my first job out of college, this was back when Craigslist and, you'd go into your local newspaper to look for ads, and, coming out of college, I didn't know what I didn't know, and it said, marketing specialist, and so I think, "This is fantastic." I go and I interview for the position, and it's in this swanky building. The president of the company is this young gentleman. And so I'm like, well, wow, he's successful shortly after his college career. Maybe that can be me. It's all young people in similar brackets as myself. And come to find out it was door-to-door sales. So I literally sold, I sold internet services, I sold security systems. It was the worst job. I went into massive debt because of it, because it's one of those things. It was truly the epitome of a pyramid scheme, but I think that really taught me grit too, because it was like, unless you sell something, you're not making a paycheck that day. And I think I lasted all of maybe 6 to 9 months, something like that, before it was like, okay, I'm too far in debt. I got to find another career. But it was it, and sadly now I do have a soft spot for people that still have door-to-door sales because it still exists, but it's not something that we should necessarily do. There's got to be a better way. But I do feel that kind of gained me my trajectory of how to talk to people and how to learn how best to navigate abstentions.
And you probably learn how to read people really quickly. You got a really good education on reading the room. So it's funny you mentioned that. So I don't know that I'm a great salesperson as opposed to marketer. I think later in life, I consider myself more of an educator and to find out if there's a good fit, not that old traditional. But I think there's something to be said. Like, I think everybody should probably have to go sell something either door to door or referral based. I think everybody should have to work retail and everybody should have to wait tables just to learn a little humility and how to work with people and not take things for granted. So my first, I guess, sales experience was selling world's finest chocolate covered almonds for my school,
Yep.
and I sold more than anybody else. By I don't know where I learned this in third grade. I bought a box and I gave out free samples, and either
Oh,
people loved them and bought them, or they felt guilty and bought them. I didn't really care. So, and then I made a deal with my kids because I had a friend. He sort of flailed around. And we were out one day and there's this ad about make $12 an hour, whatever. It was selling Cutco knives. And he did really, really well.
oh, uh-huh.
He did really, really well selling them. He was making a year. I mean, I'm not going to date myself, but when $1,000 a week for working 20 hours, 10, 20 hours was a lot of money. He was making 1,000 a week, which was, he was driving a brand new Honda Prelude. I mean, he was on top of the world. So I told my kids, if you sell Cutco knives for the summer before you go to college, I will match whatever you make up to 3 grand. So my son, he definitely has more tenacity. He learned the value of a Rolodex because, open up my Rolodex to him. So a lot of people, open their door. And I don't think some of these people who bought $3,000 sets bought because it was my kid, because they saw the value of the knives and bought them. And then
Yeah.
some people would buy a knife. So he made a little over 3 grand, and he cussed his way through that summer, and he'd call me up bitching and moaning and complaining. I'm like, you don't have to keep the job.
Mhm.
And he persevered. And I think it taught him that perseverance more than anything else, right? My daughter lasted 9 days and she pulled a pollen. So, you know, it was worth the 3 grand for the lessons he learned for sure.
Yeah.
Did you have any sales mentors? I mean, Like, did you work at a place that had a formal sales training program or?
No. No, now that I think of it, I really didn't. I think it was just like build upon. I served, I bartended, I did door-to-door sales. Heck, even at like similar to you, like I was a Girl Scout. So, you wanted those cookie sales and you were gonna make them feel bad or make them purchase it because they wanted them. So, I think it was just innately embedded in me since I was a kid. And it's funny as I think about it now, both with growing my team here and then at my other property, where it's like, how do I, there's, I have tenured or seasoned sales professionals on my team, or I have ones that are shortly, or recently graduated that we're trying to kind of help support their growth and development. And so it's trying to figure out what kind of um, sales will really resonate with them. Oh gosh, I don't know if you've ever used Fred Pryor before. Um,
The seminar company, and they do all sorts of seminars?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like as you Google or look at different sales programs, Fred Pryor of course has one, and that's a funny one if you want a good chuckle. But yeah, I don't think I ever really had a formal. I think it was just a bunch of different positions that really helped support that.
Yeah, I think a lot of restaurant owners, they're really good at making food, working the line, working in their business. They don't, understand the value of sales. Like, my friend Rhonda talked about how the DMC, she
Uh-huh.
said, sales, you pay everybody's salary. That's the job of it's not you're just paying your salary, you're providing everybody's salary, right?
Yeah.
And when I had my restaurant, I focused a lot on catering sales because I knew we did 1,000,000 a year out of a 105-seat restaurant when I sold in '05, which was a lot out of a single unit, and it provided a really good base of profit for us, to enjoy our lifestyle and not just show up and work a job every day, right?
Right.
And I try to tell these franchise organizations, if you're going to recruit a franchisee for your sandwich chain, find a guy who worked in pharma sales or medical sales or any kind of sales so they can sell the catering and double their profit out of a unit. You can hire anybody to make a sandwich. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you're not going to hire that bubbly teenager to go out and sell catering. They just don't, it's not their business. They're not going to do it as well as you can. So hire somebody who can do that. But if I were going to come to work for you, and again, we're talking super big event, super big contracts, we're not talking about a $300-400 drop off. What are the 3 or 4 basic things you're going to teach me on how to sell, how to work a deal, how to close a deal that we might be able to, if I'm a restaurant operator listening, you can say, okay, here's some good tips that I can apply with me and my team trying to close that, whether it's a $500 drop off event or a $3,000 office party that we're going to go set up for.
Yeah. Um, I would say the first is probably standard across the board is relationship driven. Is really honing in on the conversation, listening to your potential customer, and picking out tidbits of what it is that they're sharing with you, whether it's body language or verbal cues, so that you can build upon that where you're developing a personal connection with them in tandem so that the trust is starting to grow. Because without that, I mean, you can sell anything, but then if you don't deliver on it, then you're going to have to give all your money back ultimately. And so that's the number one thing that I tell my team is that, we if I wanted people that were order takers, then I would just hire someone that's an administrative that has no background, that doesn't have communication skills or etiquette or professionalism. But if I want someone that's a true salesperson, then I want someone that is going to be relationship driven and isn't just going to look at this as another transactional component. I would say the second piece of that is collaboration and really like figuring out in advance of what is my bottom line, what makes sense, where are the non-negotiables for what I need, and what are the non-negotiables for what they need, so that you can come together and really find that sweet spot of how to earn the business, but also maintain it. Um, and then I'd say probably the third component of that is having a holistic approach. Um, Understanding the industry as a whole. So for our purposes, but in my opinion could be translatable across the board, it is understanding um, the food industry, the food trends, and if you are approaching someone for a dinner banquet, what are some key components that you have to take into account when you're listening to them? They have a program, or they have an award ceremony, or they've got very elite individuals that will be attending this. So what are the things that you have to sell them on in order to make sure that it's successful, but makes it so that you are the right choice for them, because you seemingly understand what it is that they're trying to convey and execute, so that again you can close that deal and make sure that you're delivering on what it is that you're selling.
The common thread I heard while you were talking is listen, listen, listen. And
Yes.
I have found in my own personal, whether it's personal buying situations or whether it's professional, people don't listen anymore. It's very difficult. So I would say that that is a skill that you need to practice. And what I've told my people is write it down
Mm-hmm.
and then say it back to them so you understand. So if I understand you correctly, not running out of food is important. Having choices is important. This is, getting 1,000 people fed in 15 minutes is important. Did I miss anything? Now, I don't know. Do you know what the Plod note taker pin is? Have you seen this device?
No.
So they make one that's the size of like a credit card that you could put on the back of your phone. And there's one, it's like, imagine a large pill shape, like an oval, and you can put it on a necklace, you can put it on your wrist, and it will literally, if you and I were having a conversation face to face, it would record everything and it would transcribe the whole conversation. It would give you a synopsis of the notes. So now you're not focused on taking the notes. And, I would ask permission and say, hey, do you mind if I record this? Because we're going to discuss, probably hundreds of details on your event. And I want to make sure I don't miss anything. And I'm happy to give you a transcript of the conversation. And then that way I can help. And then you go back and you review it. You go, oh, I'm, I missed that, right? Because it's like when you watch a movie, the second time you pick up 50 things you didn't pick up. So I think AI is not going to replace salespeople anytime soon, but I do think it's going to help them do a better job, whether it's listening to a phone conversation and giving you a synopsis, or what was the tone of that, and even from a sales management standpoint, we're looking at that down the road to analyze, okay, I've got a salesperson. Did they read the room? Did they understand? If somebody's talking to a client and they're dropping the F bomb and there's anger in their voice, you to ask your salesperson, oh no, Tom's fine. He's happy. Well, wouldn't you want to know, here are the 4 calls my salesperson had that raised a red flag that somebody's not happy about something, and I need to understand what happened, because you don't have time to filter through all the calls. You don't have time to get deep root, but you'd like to know those 4 calls in a week that could cost you $1 million worth of business if it's not corrected, right? So it's really crazy where this is all gonna,
Oh,
end up merging the two, AI with the human element, right?
yep, absolutely.
Are y'all using AI in anything you're doing?
Um, yes and no. I mean, in full transparency, Chat GPT is certainly something that people are utilizing, my team utilizes for whether it's inspiration or help me write this email better. We also use AI from a vending perspective. We are working towards frictionless um, outlets because we also operate the what others might deem as concessions. We call them restaurant and cafes just because we try to have a more enhanced appeal to them versus just your traditional concession stand where I visualize if I went to my son's baseball game and I walk up and it's candy bars and popcorn and a hot dog. So,
So you're
you know,
running, not only are you doing cater, are you handling the concession, well, what we call concessions as well as the catering?
yes.
So you're running two businesses under one roof, right? And you're probably
Yep.
looking for innovative concepts. Somebody wants to come in and get stir fry. They don't want to get another hot dog, and another nachos with the cheese by the pound
Yep.
okay.
100%, yeah. Yeah, so it's like it's, both sides of the brain. What is
Right.
gonna be cost effective, from a cafe outlet perspective, and then from a premium side. So, I don't know if any of your listeners or yourself for that matter, there was a book that, a colleague of mine had recommended that both myself and some of my team members read, and I did this eons ago, called Just Listen by Mark Goulston. And it's similar vein of what you and I were chatting about in terms of listening. Like it's something that it's kind of like a really bad analogy, but chicken soup for the soul, where it's little
Yeah.
snippet and it's talking about how to really, because everyone dawn a time, there's a difference between listening and hearing. And I think oftentimes we hear the sound of it and we're so focused on what we're about to say to that person because what we have to say is more important than what they're saying. But in actuality, listening is the key to it. And then follow up communication, like that's so imperative to our line of business, both again small scale and large scale, is we can have a conversation for an hour, and then whether your recollection is different than mine, if there's not that follow up and that closure of bridging that gap, you could lose that sale very quickly because you were too late or you didn't have that added touch. So I still tell my team that we write handwritten thank you notes. I still tell them if your first point of contact is not to pick up the phone, then you are failing. Because yes, a lot of us are busy. Email is predominant these days and just digital in general, but you can't discount the human interaction. That's why what we do hopefully will never die because there was, some of those recent studies of human interaction. And while AI is certainly a prevalent force upcoming, you still can't take away from the necessity for humans to interact and engage. That's why the pandemic was so tough for people to then, once we got back together, how to interact with each other. But it's something that I think will last for the foreseeable future because it's just that engagement is really important for the soul.
For sure. Well, that's if I was going to pick one golden nugget from this interview, is the power of listening. Give me the name of that book again and the author.
It's called Just Listen by Mark Goulston. So Goulston.
Awesome. Great
Yeah,
takeaway. I'm working harder at being a better listener. I think with ADD, you're like three steps ahead, trying to think of the next question that you're going to ask because you don't want to forget it. And so I get it. And it also goes a long way when people think that you've understood what they need, they're more likely to want to work with you because there's nothing worse. Like I tell salespeople all the time, I'm a buyer. I, you know, I'll tell you what I want. Somebody prospect got through to me and trying to sell me some accounting software, high level accounting software. And I was just like, look, I'm not a good prospect. This is where we are. If I thought that this was a pain point, I'd tell you, like, you don't have to dig it out of me. I'm telling you, she goes, I really appreciate your candor. I wish more people were like that because at the end of the day, you don't want to waste your time with a prospect who doesn't have the budget or is not going to be a buyer. And you'd rather get a no quickly and somebody tell you, what they're dealing with. Well,
absolutely.
Lauren, this has been a pleasure. I appreciate your time. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and thank you.
It was an honor and a privilege. I really appreciate your time, sir, and it was nice to chat.
You've been listening to Restaurant Catering Smarts. For more insights and episodes, make sure to follow along, subscribe, and share at caterzen.com.